All right, hi everyone. I'm Adrian, and I'm a student from Microverse from Panama, and I've been in the program now since January. And today I'm hosting this webinar together with my co-host Rafael. Hi,
Thank you,
Rafael.
Adrian. Hi. Yeah,
And where,
Microverse.
where are you from, by the way?
I'm from Nigeria.
From Nigeria.
Yeah.
So we will give a short background about Microverse, and then we will introduce you to today's speaker, which
All
is
right.
Paul.
Hello, everyone.
All right, guys. Microverse is a program for remote software developers that is completely free until you get a job. We have different courses in our program ranging from data structure and algorithm, Ruby on Rails, HTML and CSS, JavaScript, React, Windows, and we also have coding partners that help us along the line of our study. Our coding partners are not in our physical location; they are also remote, and we learn through the pair programming ideology. Every couple of weeks, we organize this lunch and learn with great speakers like Paul. And the goal is to inspire our students by giving them different perspective from professional software developers who work in freelancing, open source, and great companies, or are even working remotely, like Paul himself. We open this lunch and learn also to the general public in order for them to get inspired and understand what Microverse stands for. I think that's a short background of what we do here at Microverse.
So today we have Paul Rail with us, and first of all, Paul, thanks a lot for taking the time to do this lunch and learn with us today.
My
And
pleasure. Thanks, Adrian.
it really means a lot. So I'm going to turn the lunch and learn over to you in just a second. But first, I want to remind everyone in here that they can ask questions using the Q&A section in the webinar, and we will get to as many as we can after the talk. Okay? All right. Your turn now, Paul.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks, Adrian and Raphael, for the introduction. So first of all, I just want to say I do apologize if my camera has some glitches in it. I think it's been dropped. Also, my cat may join us sometimes as she gets jealous for attention. She hopefully won't knock over the camera. I do apologize in advance, just in case people are not sure who she is here. And she decided as she started hearing you guys talk that she wanted to be part of this. Also, I do have a bit of a cough, so I apologize for that. Yeah. So thanks for having me. Welcome, everyone. And as they were saying, my name is Paul. I am actually a Microverse alumni. Just to as well give you a heads up, just the way I know I operate, I've written out some basic notes of what I'll be talking about today. Just knowing myself, I'm always better off when I prepare my thoughts ahead of time in various notes, as opposed to just kind of going at it ad lib. So a quick rundown of my talk today is I'll first go over what I was doing before I joined Microverse, how I got involved, what my time was like during the program with my coding partner Kyle, whom I think many of you may have heard speak maybe a month ago or so. Then I'll go more into what the end of the program was like and the job search process. And then finally, what it's like to now that I'm working as a remote developer full-time. And then, of course, any questions at the end. I can elaborate on more of these different parts as people like to ask some questions. Okay, so getting into that. First, going back, 10 years or so, I gotten a bachelor's degree, worked as a geotechnical engineer, which was, again, going back many years. It was a good career, but some downsides to it at the time were that I was never home, and it was also a very dangerous job, just by the nature of where I was working and what I was doing. And so after several years of doing that, I wanted to move out of it and decided that from that point forward, one of the things I had decided for myself was that I only wanted to learn skills that were ubiquitous as opposed to skills that were esoteric. So what I mean by that is, for example, geological engineering. Though it's interesting for some people, not for all, but for someone like me, it was interesting. But once you find yourself out of that field, those skills and that knowledge does almost nothing else for any other aspect of your life once you've left. Like there's nothing else to be gained from that if it's now a closed chapter of your life. Versus ubiquitous skills are skills that are useful in everything that you do across a wide ranges of fields and disciplines or other aspects of your life. So that led me into wanting to teach myself finance. And because learning about money, I saw as being a skill that'd be forever valuable for the rest of my life. And from teaching myself finance, I actually was able to actually turn that into an actual active career. And so I became a financial advisor. I really enjoyed that. And again, the skill is just beneficial in every aspect of things that I do for the rest of my life. However, that industry, like many others that we can observe today, is actually dying and is being replaced by software, like many other fields that we see. This is another time where I made the important observation that the world is very different today than the one that our parents grew up in. So a lot of the things that maybe might have applied to them or advice that I might ever see at those times didn't really apply today anymore. So I was continuing with my philosophy of wanting to focus on learning ubiquitous skills that will help me lifelong, and then observations of where the world is going, where the status quo is now, and through those observations, I noticed that everyone I knew who seemed to be in software development, they seemed to be quite happy with their careers and their lives in general. They were treated better at work. They had good pay, good work-life balance, all these different kinds of things. It just seemed to be an industry that was still booming. And I was like, okay, well, I would like to emulate that. That seems to be important to recognize, that being in the right industry at the right time was one of the crucial factors in lifelong success. So then that's when I decided, again, through a lot of observations and pondering these kinds of things, that I was going to, while I was continuing my career in finance, I was going to begin studying software development on the side. So I would do this in the evenings and whatnot, just to try and kind of feel the water. And so at some point, it seemed very promising. Like, okay, I can do this. I started doing things like free code camp, etc. This seemed like a viable option, and I want to give it a go. So I, at some point, decided I was going to pursue this full time. So I left my financial advisor career, and I was going to go forward with this. However, the lessons and knowledge and skills I learned from finance are going to be helpful for me every day of my life. So I'm really glad I did that. But I think that going forward in software seems to be the way to go. So I learned, got into involved different groups such as Free Code Camp. I also started what was called the 100 Days of Code Challenge, different things of the nature. And then at this point is actually where I ran into the founder of Microverse, Ariel, and through some various online forums like Free Code Camp and such. And he was beginning this Microverse project of his, him and his team. And he approached me discussing what this would be like. And it just seemed like a better proposition in various ways compared to some other boot camps who had invited me to come to their campus and try out their program. I remember that I did like an 8-hour day trial in JavaScript in a boot camp that they had me come over and give it a shot. And I found that, yeah, of course, it's great because boot camps accelerate your learning compared to, if you're always just kind of working at home and whatnot, or it's a way to kind of incentivize yourself to really give it a go, etc. I found that in that 8-hour day, the amount of coding I would learn in a large classroom for 8 hours, I felt I could do the same amount of learning in just 4 hours if I was on my own, based on the resources being online, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this led me to join Microverse because it was online learning. Also, you didn't have to pay up front. So the proposition being great in that the organization and the student have the same incentive, which I thought was just a phenomenal, wonderful idea. It's a new take on education where a lot of other universities and boot camps, et cetera, it's a very antiquated system where as soon as they kind of bring you into their program, at some point it really feels like they just, again, I've done university and whatnot. As soon as they have your money and you're done with the program, at some point they're like, okay, good, we have what we need from you. You're on your own now, go for it. And it just felt like more, it was a business that did not care about you at all. And once again, as soon as they got what they wanted from you, there was no need or incentive for them to make the program better or to try and assist their students in making the extra meaningful step of actually getting a job, for example. With Microverse, that wasn't the case. Very appealing. I just love that modern take on education, because all other systems, to be honest, I feel are quite antiquated. They've been around for, thousands of years, I suppose, that whole system. All right, so then I joined Microverse. At this point here, the founder, I had to wait a little bit before the founder could find someone that would be in my time zone. And finally, he found Kyle that would join. He and I did the 2-day trial of doing a very small product together. And I believe the current Microverse program still has this trial period or does something similar. I know that some improvements in general, the program has been kind of upgraded over time as it grows and improves. And so some of the things I may have experienced may be different from what the current students are doing today. But yeah, Kyle was an excellent coding partner. I was quite lucky to have him on my team. We were both driven to succeed. He's very nice and very clever, great at problem solving. We had complementary skill sets as well, which worked really well for us getting through the program. Pardon me. While we're going through the program, what was it like for Microverse? As we started, Kyle had always felt that he preferred working on the back end. And he'd already had some experience with the Odin project, for example, and working on some Ruby on Rails. Versus me, on the other hand, I prefer more the front end. Though I can enjoy both. I can enjoy both. This could possibly have to do with the fact that I started learning the front end first with JavaScript, while he had learned Ruby on Rails first on the back end. And so maybe the one you started first is the one you tend to enjoy. I'm not sure if that's the case. It just kind of seemed to be that way. With myself, I often find that if there's something that I quote unquote don't like, but let's say I just slowly get better at it, I start chipping away at learning it, I start to like it more and more as I get better at it. And this is what happened with Ruby on Rails. As I got better at it, I started enjoying it more. Also things like CSS. And actually, when I got a quick image here that I thought would be relevant to our chat. So I just have a link. I'm going to post it in the chat. And I'm not sure if you'll all be able to see it. I'm not sure if I can just add an image. I'm just going to post a quick link. Feel free to open it if you like. It's just I will never forget this image. It's a picture of a T-shirt, and inside it says CSS is awesome, and inside you'll see that's clearly not centered, which anyone who's done a lot of work with CSS knows this struggle all too well. That CSS is notorious for being difficult and challenging in some ways. So I was always remember this logo. You can also get it on mugs and whatnot. It's one of my favorite designs. Yeah, so while we're going through the program, the curriculum at the time, again, it may be different then. It was Ruby on Rails, then JavaScript, then React. A couple of things intertwined in there. At the time, when we were doing the early stages, Kyle was stronger in the Rails section. He had worked with it before, and he enjoyed the backend a bit more than I did. Versus I was more stronger in like the JavaScript and React kind of stuff, which is what I had. Yeah, just reading the comments here as I'm going through it. I had worked with that kind of stuff before, and so for me, I found that the Ruby on Rails section of the curriculum was the most challenging part for me because it was completely brand new to me. Also, I find it a bit more abstract. You can't quite see. You don't have a visual representation on the screen at all times of what's going on. And so, at some point, Kyle was probably putting in a bit more at this point of the curriculum than I was, and later on would be more me with JavaScript. And so what I was doing while he was doing he would do more of that driving. In the evenings, after we finished our typical regular 8-hour day of the curriculum, I was focused on trying to catch up on the Ruby on Rails section, just to get, I want to balance out my skill set, of course, across the whole gamut of skills to be a proper full stack developer. Granted, you could never know everything, but I just wanted to get stronger. I wanted to get stronger. I wanted to spend more time. So basically every evening after we finished our regular 8-hour day, is I would spend an additional 2 up to maybe 4 hours every night, spending more time just on Rails, just Ruby on Rails, and I would do this every day, just to try and get some extra experience in there. And slowly, so Kyle was perhaps here. This will be Kyle. And then I was here. And so slowly I would get a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer, because I wanted to be, of course, on par, and I wanted to round out my skill set. And I'm seeing Abed is saying the same thing happened to him. So perhaps he may have had a similar experience where maybe he was stronger in something like JavaScript or whatever it may have been that he was more experienced in. And now this was certainly exhausting. Yeah, exactly. This was certainly exhausting, but for me, it was completely worth it. It was important for me to do. I needed to, of course, you need to round out your skill set to get to the finish line, so to speak, or to get to the point where you're ready, to be job ready. And exhausting, but totally worth it. So I'm very, very happy that I did that. Another thing we did during our program is, I apologize. I'm just gonna turn off my phone here, shut the net. Okay, yeah, one of the things we did during our program is we were encouraged to seek out freelance work and do some small contracts. And so we actually secured a small contract that ended up, because it went well initially, we ended up continuing it. Both me and Kyle for the same freelance employer or contract employer for like 10 hours a week. It didn't pay very much. However, that was not our concern at the time. We were just happy to have a client that would be willing to give us a shot. And so, what we were producing wasn't necessarily maybe the highest quality, or maybe we couldn't do things very quickly, but we were learning, and again, we weren't asking very much out of this. We just were happy for the opportunity, and it ended up going well. And so that ended up being an ongoing, continuous thing throughout the rest of the program. One of the cons of doing this is actually it slowed down our progress of getting through the curriculum that Microverse sets for us. But of course, by far, all the pros easily outweigh any of the cons that you may have. The fact that it took us longer, because the real world experience and paid work, of course, is going to be more valuable in terms of all of your learning. Just seeing what Andrew's written here. Okay. And I know that the structure of Microverse, of course, keeps improving over time as they get feedback from everybody. People who have joined before us have provided feedback, and there was already improvements that we were benefiting from. And then while we were going through it, there was some various feedback we were providing as well. And so students today are benefiting from that. The structure, I remember for us at the time, it was a little bit of everything every day, or at least every week, basically from the beginning to the end. And some of the logic to this was that they didn't want to flood you with one specific concept all day, every day, because that could be mentally exhausting, perhaps. And that's why they would break it up and make you touch on everything. Some downsides we experienced through that, and I think they've kind of agreed. And so I believe the curriculum's changed since then. Is some topics were shifted in where they were placed in the curriculum. So for us, we recommended that the HTML and CSS portion, which is quite small and brief, should be at the very beginning, because HTML and CSS is quote unquote easy compared to a lot of the other things you may learn, and also that logic and learning gets applied to every other little project you take with you across, and so you're better off learning these things now to be less frustrated with some CSS nonsense, like centering an object, whatever it may be, later on in the program. So that's one thing I think they've changed. Also, we were encouraged to pursue freelancing early on and to try to grab contracts and whatnot. We found this was not the most efficient use of our time, because at this early stage, there was a lot of knowledge that we quote unquote lacked to really be a compelling candidate for potential freelance employers. There's many people who can make a basic website with just HTML, CSS. Those skills are not really going to set you apart at this stage. And so we had recommended that a lot of the freelancing stuff, though to be fair, it also worked out for us at some point. It took us a long time before we got any kind of response back from anyone we contacted looking for some freelance work. And so we recommended that get pushed back further into the curriculum, because someone should be having a little bit more well-rounded resume and skill set before they start applying to improve how your odds and your hit rate when you're looking for these things. Okay, so here once again, I'm going to continue on with my talk, but later on I can go back and answer or fill in any more in depth some of these areas if people are interested. But I'm getting now to the end of Microverse, and where I was starting to get ready to prepare for interviews and then apply for jobs. So this is where my story gets really interesting. I just want to preface this as well, that there's of course many factors affecting these different things, and everyone's experience can be a little bit different. Yes, Alvar. While you're going through the Microverse program, there's a lot of various boxes for you to check off. Your goal is to be checking off all the boxes, and all these little pieces could be a component in what gets you that opportunity. And you don't know necessarily which ones will be there, but your goal is to check them all off. And another thing is that, of course, one factor is where you live. This is one small piece of the puzzle, but that may have played a part into what I've experienced here as well. And so we have basically reached the end of the curriculum. We're still doing the part-time contract work about 10 hours a week. Here's the part where we had finished all of our resumes, our online profiles like LinkedIn, Indeed. There's some ones that are specific to Canada at the time that I was a part of as well, like Monster. There's also Angel List, maybe Upwork, a couple other ones. And so the resumes were done, the profiles were done, they were reviewed. We had gone through all that, LinkedIn, etc. We had done, the various skills in LinkedIn, your photo, making sure your online portfolio page has links to everything. Everything's all connected. So if you open up your resume, it takes you to your GitHub page. Oh, GitHub page, of course, that's one big one, and also GitHub has changed a lot over the last, couple of years, as they keep adding features as well. So you can add more description and details to each project you have. You can highlight your projects. You can show like a timeline of what you've done. Also things like articles we've written over time, et cetera, et cetera. Again, long list of various things to start adding to your roster, to your armature of things that can be helping you get a better chance of getting involved in a process of being interviewed, for example. All right, so all those things are up, all those checkboxes were done, so to speak, though things can always get better. I had reached a point where, okay, I was going to be now, I'm going to sit down. The next 2 weeks are dedicated, this is the finish line, the next 2 weeks are dedicated entirely just to prepare for interviews. So this is going to be going through, once again, reviewing algorithms, linked lists, binary search trees, depth first search, breadth first search, doing more mock interviews, etc. And I was going to spend 2 weeks just on that. Okay, well, this never happened for me. I had never gotten a chance to sit down and do the 2 weeks of preparation because it started off as a company reached out to me from LinkedIn asking me, they said they see my profile and they asked me if they'd like me to come and interview for them in the next couple of days. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's exciting. I wasn't quite ready. Like I would like to get all my I's dotted and T's crossed before interviewing, but I wasn't going to say no. Of course, I did my research on the company. I also was just upfront with them saying, oh, yeah, okay. I was just on the verge of being ready to start applying to positions. And my plan was, again, as I described to you, I was going to sit down and start preparing for interviews. So I hadn't had a chance to do those things, but sure, I'd be happy to come in. And so, again, I was really upfront about that. And then I went for the interview. First, it was, it must have been 4 parts to this interview. A quick screening call with one of their office managers, and then another call with their CTO, who was very nice. And then I had my first in-person interview with their CTO. And thankfully, once again, she was very nice. And our interview, we did not spend much time on things like algorithms and depth first search and breadth first search, which the industry is notorious for. It may be one of two things. Is one, I was upfront that I hadn't had much time to review those things, so perhaps she did not include very much of that in the interview process. Two, some companies don't see the value in those things, or as much as others do, and that can be also something to consider while you're interviewing. Is okay, as much as linked lists and breadth first search and depth first search are great things to exercise your mind, how much of that do you actually use in the real world? Almost every single developer who works today will all agree, almost all, that you really don't use these very much. Or if you do, that you go so long between using them that you kind of forget how these things work. What's important is to have exercised your brain these things. But actually focusing that on interview, ask yourself if that's a good sign and that's a company you want to work for. But anyways, so I went through the interview. We had some basic questions that were all very reasonable. And I certainly did the best that I could going through them. What I observed in the interview is that it was going well. She asked me some general questions on different things. This was going to be a Ruby on Rails job, which of course some front end as well. As I went through it, I thought I was going well, but also I could notice that as I was going through it, she would start throwing at me questions that were getting more and more difficult towards the end. Which is what you would expect. And now I was getting to the end. This is where I was starting to struggle a little bit. Again, I didn't have quite the chance to fully prepare for everything. And naturally, I felt confident in the skills that I had. But of course, it's important to know that there's always more you can learn. There's always someone who's better. And there's always more time, more experience is always going to make you better at these things. So I was starting to struggle, honestly, at the end with the interview. And I could see that within her body language. So she was very positive and polite and nice. So I could see that what she was observing as well is that by the end of the interview, she could see that I was starting to struggle with these harder questions. And I just observed that in her body language. I just relaxed. I wasn't going to be stressing about this. I wasn't going to be freaking out. I was up front. I would say, oh, okay. I would pause on the questions, like, ask if I had a moment to think about it. I was up front. Then I was starting to struggle on these things, just being myself, relaxing. I didn't start saying, oh my God, I really need this, I really need this. No, this was my first real interview. There's going to be many others to come. And so I was just going to do my best. So I went away from that. She had all nice things to say. In her body language, I could kind of sense that it wasn't, she was maybe, I guess one word I could say is she was possibly disappointed to some degree that the end I was starting to struggle in there, which again, it's just the way it was. But everything else was really positive. So at some point then I had left. Actually, I think I correct myself. This is my fourth interview. Yeah, so the first one was with one of the junior developer, quick phone interview with the manager, CTO phone interview, and then a in-person interview with one of the junior developers. And then the fourth one was the one I'm speaking about now with the CTO with the more technical questions. So I went away from that. I discussed with people in Microverse and my coding partner, etc., about different things. We're all giving each other feedback on all the different things, asking some friends of mine who are also developers on different things. And, I gave the sense that, okay, I think it went well, though by the end I was struggling. I had some doubts because of that, which I think would be fair to say. What I did was, that night, I actually pondered it some more. The last questions, I just kept pondering. I'm like, I wonder how I could have answered that better. Because even if this opportunity did not go forward, I would be able to use this towards all other interviews going following after this. So I pondered it, and I did some research, and I tried some different test things myself as well. Another thing I had done for that interview is because this is all a little bit rushed, I suppose, on their side. They had sent me a take-home take-home coding challenge. Not very long, not very elaborate, just 3-4 hours maybe. And they said, "Oh, we know this is very last minute, Paul, but if you could just kind of look at this and think about it, and when you come to the interview, just kind of give us a walkthrough of how you would approach this. We don't expect you to fully build it, because we know it's last minute. We'd like to give our candidates a few more days to be able to build this, but if you could just think about it and walk us through it. So before the interview, I told myself, okay, so I did that, but then I actually went and built it. I'm like, okay, they told me they don't expect me to build it, but I went and built it anyway. So they're like, you know what, I'm just gonna try and go, quote unquote, above and beyond, or at least show enthusiasm and towards this. So I actually built it, very simple, nothing fancy. But I came there and was like, oh, so I know you told me that I was just expected to only, conceptualize this and walk you through it, and that, you recognize that maybe you didn't have time to build it. I went and built it anyways. They really liked that. That just showed my motivation, showed my enthusiasm, because I built it anyways. Nothing fancy, but then she was super excited when she saw, like, oh, that's fantastic, great. We went through it and we analyzed what I did and didn't do, different things on my models and my controllers, my views, etc. And then going back forward again to the last question that I kept pondering the night after the interview. So again, I pondered it some more. I thought about it. I did some research on what she was going on about, or the conclusions I figured she was probably hoping I would get to. The answer and the logic she was hoping that would probably reach with the questions she was leading me to. And so I prepared a response back to her on LinkedIn saying, hey, thought a bit more about those last questions in the interview, and I believe I can see now where I may have faltered and what I may have been missing. And I believe I came up with a better response now. Again, I'm not expecting anything out of this. I just thought it was good to try. At least there was no harm in trying. And so I provided a better response. And actually, that's what did it in the end. Of course, all the other things leading up to it were part of it. But she said that because I came back to her with another response unprompted, I just did this because I thought it was a good idea. And some friends encouraged me as well. I sent back a better response. And that she said, okay, great. Thanks for that. You passed. So we'll be sending you an offer. Exciting, yay. So that was very thrilling. Again, I had gone from the point where I was not even prepared to start applying. I was going to just start studying for interviews. I was going to sit down and just start studying for interviews and start preparing for this. This is not expected. I was thinking, another 2 weeks of preparation, then start applying. Wait for some responses. Some of them will be no's, some will be yeses. It'd be a longer process still to go on. All right, so this is where my story continues. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to me, during this whole period, my current boss in the background, who did not tell me this, he was also working towards making me an offer as well. I had no idea. And so at some point he just he said, I want to throw my hat in the ring. I really enjoyed working with you and Kyle as well, actually. So we're both working for the same company now. And so I had no idea he was going to do this. So he said, I want to throw my hat in the ring. I want a shot at this too before you get gobbled up by someone else, because you guys have been able to produce for my company. And we find that a lot of the people we tried to hire in the past from 12-week coding boot camps, he found, absolutely. Coding boot camps were not that promising because, how much can you learn in 12 weeks? Yes, you can learn a lot, but compared to Microverse is way more thorough. And so he said, I want to throw my hat into the ring, so here's an offer too. I had no idea I was going to do this. I had no idea. And when we started discussing this, it really seemed to be that, actually, I should continue. So continuing my story further, again, unprompted by me, here's where really the floodgates just opened. And I was completely shocked and taken aback at all this. And it was really important to just remain humble because it was just so shocking. I also, during this time, I happened to have family visiting because once again, I was not interviewing at this time, or at least I wasn't planning to. They were just going to be coming into town. And so I spent some time with them. But however, I was getting email after email after email from different companies. I was getting phone call after phone call after phone call from different companies from all over the place, nonstop, like almost every single day, several times a day even. I was getting so many phone calls and emails from different companies asking me if I'd like to interview with them. A lot of them were also just recruiters. Good question, I bet. So a lot of them were based in my city, which is Toronto, but not all. So for example, I was getting so many phone calls and families visiting. So I'm on the phone with different recruiters while my family is in the room with me because they're, we're having dinner or whatever. And I'm going through these, and I hadn't applied to these jobs. And at some point, again, I had an offer on the table, 2 offers on the table at this point. And then, I would go through more interviews and whatnot. I had a couple more offers now. So, they range from being not great offers to great offers and everything in between. So the whole gamut. I had to, at some point, I had to just take down, well, first I would toggle off my profile saying, are you available or not available? I would check off no at this point. At some point, I just took down my profiles because I was getting so many phone calls. I had to take them down because there was no way to handle that much information. At some point, also, your response rate was going to be of poor quality because I wouldn't want to get someone's name wrong who contacted me from this company or get their company name wrong, etc. And so at some point, I would get a phone call and I would say, oh, hello. It's like, oh, hi. Is this Paul? And I would say, yes, hello. Hello, my name is Rachel. I'm calling from Apple. We'd like to get a chance to interview with you. I'm like, I'm sorry, did you say Apple? It's like, yeah, well, what we'd be looking for is if you were to pass our interview, we'd be flying you to Cupertino in California to interview with us. And if you pass, you would have to move to Cupertino to interview with us. Yeah, so I was like, what? How did Apple get my resume? How did they find my I didn't, I was, yeah, exactly, mind blown, Cynthia. Yes, exactly. Amazon as well. I was blown away. I wasn't applying to these companies. And so some of them were remote jobs too. Again, I state again, a lot of these were local, which is one key detail. And a bunch of factors that affect this is all the checkboxes you check off throughout the curriculum, your profile, your articles, all these different things. So yeah, I was getting so many emails. At some point now, when I would get a phone call from someone, hey, my profile wasn't online anymore. I'd say, okay, well, that sounds very interesting. Thank you for contacting me. Just so you know, I would have to say that, okay, well, the thing is I have offers on the table right now. I've gone through interviews, and so I'm open to interviewing with you as well. I haven't made a decision yet, and I still have some time. However, at this point, we would need to be able to speed up your process, or I'm not going to have the time to go through that. And so some companies now are saying, oh, okay. So what they, usually you go through let's say those typical 4 rounds or variations thereof of their interview process. First of all, your resume has to go through a hiring manager. They have to scan through the keywords, and then it goes through someone more technical, and they say, okay, those are the skill sets we want here. Then it goes to maybe the CTO. It's like, okay, yeah, and they go through a list of candidates. Well, they have to skip all that and say, okay, well, so they would organize meetings to speak with me over Skype, and so it would be like their CEO would be like in the middle, like after lunch, he would be walking on the street, joining the Skype call, and then their CTO would be somewhere in some other country, and then someone else was on holidays, traveling. And so they would get all 4 of them. They would arrange, okay, let's try and make this happen so we get a phone call with Paul before he has to make a decision. So I'd be on a Skype call with 4 of them, some of them walking on the street, trying to make sure this would happen when they could all get together. And just going through, a very quick compressed version of what questions they would ask anyways. And at some point, I would just, I was being very honest with the whole thing, that I never had a chance to properly prepare for the more technical questions or the algorithm type questions, linked lists, etc. And again, very important to remain humble in all this because, again, there's always more you can learn. There's still a lot more I didn't know at the time. There'll forever be more I still need to know. And of course, a lot of these contacts too, it would be just recruiters, and the quality of contacts you get from recruiters are not always the best. Many of them would be, for example, okay, so let's say some of them are short-term contracts. Okay, oh, we have something for 3 months. I'm like, okay, well, I have an offer for full-time. Naturally, thank you for your interest, but I won't be pursuing something for 3 months. 6 months or a year. All right, well, a year, that could be interesting. And so we went through that, and I got some offers for 1-year contracts, for example. Some of them were on the low end, some were higher, and everything, like I said, I got the whole gamut. And then as well, a lot of them were, okay, well, we have a position in Python and Java. I'm like, well, I don't have much experience in Python and Java, but they're just, some recruiters are just going to blast everyone within their radius, and they don't, not super concerned, some of them, about actually being qualified. Some of them just have a quota of, okay, well, let's say I'm George, and George, I'm a recruiter. Well, I have to present, 8 candidates to this position for me to get paid next week. So they're going to grab 8 anybody, and maybe they have 1 or 2 who, in this case, maybe they do know Python and Java, and they have 10 years experience. Okay, well, they want to round out their 8 to get their full paycheck, and so they get someone, who is not relevant whatsoever. So a lot of that will be happening as well, which is something to be expected. It's just, just be nice. Say, hey, thank you for your interest. I don't think I have the skill set you're looking for and all this. Excuse me. Other times too, where I would get phone calls at some point, I had to be respectful to the offers I did have on the table at that point. The really good quality ones, and then some of the ones that were, they were okay or somewhere on the low end. I had to be respectful at some point to be respond to them. They were the ones who gave me a shot, and the interviews went really well. They all seemed really nice. You sound like good places to work. And as well, my current boss, I had a lot of positives from that too. So to be respectful to them, I had to at some point say, I can't take any more phone calls. I'd say, I'm sorry, I'm too far into the process now. There would be no time to properly evaluate the circumstances and the position, if it's a good fit or not. So I won't be able to continue this interview. So that's what was happening to me near the end. Let me see here what else I have here for notes. I talked about that. Yep. One thing I learned from this, though, I'll note that's important to prospective students who are looking for their big break and their shot, is I learned that there really is a invisible threshold. So when Kyle and I were going through this, or even before we both started the program and we're looking into this, let's say we're at this level of experience. We're not 0, but we have some. Or including Upwork and freelancer.com, even short-term, like a single website for a restaurant, all these kind of things we may have applied to. What we observed was, we'd get little to no response. There's no response. As you increase in skill sets and in experience, through your portfolio, through everything that you're doing, all the checkboxes you're checking off throughout the curriculum, it would basically work this way. It'd be, while you're contacting people asking for an opportunity, hey, I'd be applying for this 1 gig you have posted, for this 1-month contract, for this 1 website, for whatever. It would basically be like no response, nothing, a little bit of something, whoa, and then the floodgates open. Like as soon as you hit a threshold, it's something where now you've hit a certain minimum viable candidate effectively. And so now the floodgates open, and now you qualify. Another thing I've observed is, again, the world keeps changing. The industry itself also has changed. And so, maybe 10 years ago, what would be considered a threshold may have been here, but that was 10 years ago. There's a lot more. The industry has evolved since then. Frameworks are more complex, and the websites improve. I think you may have seen for April 1st, April Fool's Day last week, Stack Overflow remade their website to look like it was made in the 90s. And it was just quite funny. They had even like a trailing cursor effect and whatnot. It was quite funny. Old style fonts and icons, etc. But anyway, so the world was different then. And so now the expectation and the threshold is higher. And so that's what it kind of felt to me, was that stories I'd heard of what it was like to get a job in tech was amazing then. It's amazing today. The threshold is higher today. So now it's like here that it takes for you to get in terms of your skill sets and your experience before you start to get the attention of people that take you seriously. Now moving on to the other part. Oh, wow, we're running out of time here. I think I'll probably stop there. That was really the meat of my presentation. I didn't think my talk would be that long. So I'll open up to questions, I think, now. I could go on to more afterwards. One thing I'll say, is, of course, all these positives with regards to coding. I'll go through some basic positives and negatives. Obvious positives will be that I had held off on making some important upgrades to my various equipment. And so once I started getting paid now, I was able to buy a new computer, a new monitor, etc., because I had held off for several years to not spend so much money while I'm waiting to actually get a job. So that was great. Also, I'll say a positive in my current position is that it's nice to have a boss who's smarter than me. And I don't know if anyone's ever experienced this, but if you've ever had a position in the past or a job in the past where you're smarter than your boss, it can be a very frustrating situation. Thankfully, my boss is he's brilliant and he's absolutely really good at what he does, and so it's nice to have someone whom I can look up to. Some negatives, again, there's more pros than cons, but some negatives are certainly a very mentally demanding career. There are days where by the end of the day, my brain has turned to oatmeal. My brain hurts. I'm like, okay, I've done a lot. Also, another thing I had done throughout the whole curriculum and all the learning was that I had shelved any other passions really that I had during that time because I was on a mission. For the sake of reaching this goal of getting those offers and getting this job, I had basically shelved all my other interests. And it could be, social life, video games. I wasn't binge watching Netflix, all different things. Basics, time with family and whatnot. So I had felt I was a bit deprived of various, life by the time I reached the end. And so now I kind of strive to have a bit more of a balance because I couldn't maintain that same level of drive forever because you would just get exhausted. What else do I have here? One thing I had noted is several students from Microverse would message me, and again, this is not everybody. Someone messaged me on Microverse on the Slack and whatnot, and it's a question I got a lot, and I just made note of this, is that, oh, hey, Paul, I'd like to speak with you. Did you find the program easy? Was it easy to get through and pass? My response was, well, honestly, no, it was not. It was a difficult process, and my take on that, and one important thing I'll say is, I think it's a good thing that it's not easy. I think that would be the wrong mentality, effectively. It's not meant to be easy, and if it was easy, everyone would be doing it, and the skills therefore would not be valuable. The fact that it's hard is why the industry is a lot of demand for it, and then also why they pay you well. So it's one thing I got a lot of questions about over the last many months. The various people is it easy? I'm like, no, it's not, and I don't think you would want it to be easy. Yes, so again, I'm sorry I went longer than I expected there, but please feel free to bring in some questions, and I'll be happy to answer them or elaborate anywhere you would like. I'm going to expand my window now. And so I guess I go to the Q&A portion now. Okay, so I'll go to the top. All right, hi, Paul. In your experience, what is a good baseline of knowledge to have before pursuing freelance work? Okay, I will say that HTML and CSS alone is not enough. A lot of people know HTML and CSS, and so making a simple website with no back-end logic is not going to be enough to differentiate yourself. You're going to want to go through, of course, HTML, CSS. You're going to want to go through good understanding of Ruby on Rails, and some JavaScript before you consider yourself having a good use of your time to go pursuing those freelance jobs. Is you want to be able to build something with a back-end, or at least a very nice JavaScript-rich front-end page, as what would be the minimum I would say before starting to pursue that. Okay, is there like a checkbox I could put here? Archive? Mark has answered. There we go. Next. Okay. Let me see here. Hi, Paul. Share us a little bit about your portfolio or CV was like. I believe Microverse actually has those available. Raphael, did you want to jump in here?
No, not really. I think the person could direct the question to Lydia, and basically any question that is about Microverse could be directed to Lydia's DM right now. But then I would be reading out the questions to you, so
sure.
You could answer.
Okay. Did you want to continue as I was doing, or would you like to start throwing the questions my way?
Yeah, you could continue. I'm having
Okay.
a little issue with the questions. Like, that's not coming up right now for me. So you could continue.
Okay, very well. So let me see here. Can you share a little bit of your portfolio and CV was like? I believe that Microverse actually shows all alumni portfolios and resumes as examples. Mine has changed a little bit since then. But certainly people are welcome to go look at them. Mine is polariscoding.com is my portfolio site. Oh, one thing I actually did that people might find interesting. What is that sound? Yes, there might have been something going on in the background at Rough Rails location. I put in, for example, in my portfolio page website, I actually added some Google Analytics tags. So I can see here, for example, that I don't think you can see this, but looks like it says I had 1,000 people visit my portfolio page, 1,073 since I've had it up. So it's something it could be nice to see if recruiters are looking at your site. Of course, the articles I've written. I also did like the 100 Days of Code Challenge, which I turned into 365 Days of Code Challenge. Some recruiters really like that. Some employers really like seeing that. You know, do something great. You know, it's just something that'll make you stand out. And again, all the program Microverse walks you through all these various things. A lot of them are ideas. You're going to try and check off all of them if you can. My resume is a bit more on the bold side, but not everyone likes that. You're not going to be able to write a resume that everyone likes. Feedback we've gotten from other recruiters, even while we were going through the program, is they would say, oh, I really like to see this in a resume. Another person say, I don't like seeing that at all. Take that out. And there was no consensus. There was no uniform resume that worked for all recruiters. It's a very personal, objective thing. So let me see here. Okay. Do you have lots of open source contributions? How'd you go about? Yes, we did do some open source. We did some stuff for the Odin project. We wrote some material for Odin project's new curriculum on Ruby. It took them a while to get them up, but we actually got that up, so that was neat. So that was great because while writing the material, we were learning, and so it was a double whammy of beneficial aspects to that. While writing the material, we were learning, and we got our name up as open source contributions, and it would show up on our GitHub page as well, of course. We did some stuff for Free Code Camp. A couple of little things. You can start off little. It could be just typos. At some point, we went from typos to fixing this little thing to Free Code Camp's new. Well, at that time was their beta. Well, now some of the stuff they have is stuff that we wrote or things that we fixed. Maybe people were writing basic tests or lessons for their students, but some of them weren't working. Well, we'd go and fix them. So we did that kind of stuff. And to the end, we were writing material for courses that people are learning about now. So learning about Ruby and some Rails stuff, we wrote some of that, which is really neat. Okay, moving on. How did I keep track of calls and emails from companies and recruiters? Well, I didn't have a very strict regiment of keeping track. I would, just sift through which ones sounded promising and fields that I enjoyed. Of course, the ones that contacted me earlier would get precedence, then people would contact me later. I wouldn't really focus too much on a 3-month contract if I have a year on offer or a full-time on offer. It was important for me to learn was it's a 2-way interview. So I've heard there's some horror stories about interviews, and if you go into it with a really negative experience, like you didn't think you were too well in an interview, likely that will lead to a non-positive job. So remember, the interviews go both ways. When you're interviewing, when they're interviewing you, you're also noting things about the interview because you're within yourself. You're interviewing them too. How are they like to work with? Do people seem happy in your environment? That's one thing I thought was important to do. From Alvaro, from all the things you did in Microverse, could you list 2 or 3 things you think helped you the most while you're in a search for the job search process? 2 or 3 things. I'll reiterate that they recommend a lot of different checkboxes, a lot of different things to tackle. And I'll say check off as many as you can, because for me, it may have been, maybe my GitHub page or maybe my portfolio page. But there wasn't one single thing. I say check off as many as you can. I think getting a part-time contract was very good for us, me and Kyle, who we both now work at the same place. That was certainly a very positive one. Having a good attitude, soft skills are very important too. For me, I think I'll reiterate what I said before. I spent more time in the evenings getting stronger in Rails because it was what I had least experience with. Therefore, it was my weakest point. But I wanted to get strong in that. I thought it was important. So the extra time I spent in the evenings beyond the 8-hour day was really beneficial. I'm really glad I did that. All the things, the articles, GitHub page, LinkedIn page. Yeah, I'd say a lot of things. Most important, I'd say, was the time I spent after the main curriculum to get stronger in Rails. Hi, Paul. Freelance work, a side project, or open source project contribution, which we prefer in priority base? I would say actually one leads to the other. This is from Deepto I apologize if I can't see your name properly, Karmakar. I would say that open source contribution is the simplest one to begin with. And then from there, you can have a side project, perhaps. Those things, you then start to get enough experience to get the freelance work or the contract work. So one leads to the other. Are you working on the back end only, making APIs, or doing some front from time to time? This is from Abed Ayub. So I am primarily a Ruby on Rails developer. I would say, let's say 70% Ruby on Rails, 30% JavaScript. I've done some stuff for my company as well for Shopify, Slate type of technology. And so, yeah, so I'd say 70% Ruby on Rails, 30% JavaScript, and the Ruby on Rails stuff has some front end as well. So that's approximately the breakdown of what I do. Different versions of resume on your profile, set your, the questions are just moving up on me here. I have just one general resume, and I'm not going to try to apply to a job that I'm not well qualified in. If it's not a good fit, I think your odds, I mean, if by all means you should try, but if you're going to have a higher success rate on the promising opportunities or positions, and so I'd rather apply to 10 promising positions that are seem like a good fit, or at least you check off most of the boxes or a lot of the boxes, than apply to 100 of just scattershot everywhere. I think your time is better spent on the ones that seem like a better fit. What are major platforms to post resume and skill sets? LinkedIn for me was the best, though again, Upwork I think was good too. Indeed was good. What was the onboarding process like? Did you start building features, fixing bugs? So I guess that's how I started my current job. Actually, in this case, ended up being that we were working for them part-time, the contract work. So that was kind of the onboarding was already done, was the litmus test or the evaluation period. Yeah, so that was one of the benefits of this position. There was less unknowns. They knew what it was like to work with me, what I could produce. I knew what it was like to work with them. So that to me was, there was some pros there. So yeah, fixing bugs, small features, tests, of course. You know, some people at some point in their careers, maybe they don't like writing tests so much. I don't mind writing tests, except though sometimes tests will give you no reason why they're not working, or there's maybe 5 versions of capybara. That can be frustrating. But tests often get offloaded to a more junior developer because someone who's been doing it for 10 years may be tired of writing tests, perhaps. I don't mind doing that. Have I done any Python? Yes, I've done a bit of Python before doing Free Code Camp, I suppose. I wrote like a battleship game in Python, for example. I enjoy Python. It's just not where my career led, but I'm open to working with it again. Any more questions you'd like to throw at me, Raphael or Adrian?
Yeah. I think you missed Stacy Nash's question. Yeah. Is it true that opportunities abound for women of color in this industry? I've heard both sides.
If I heard you correctly, did you say for women of color?
Yeah, women of color.
Okay. So naturally, I am not a woman of color, so I won't have, of course, a direct answer to answer that question. But the industry is known for being very progressive, or at least more so than other industries. There will be a lot of variance to this. I will say one of the positives, one of the draws to the tech industry as a whole, to me, is it's more on the progressive side. It's less ancient-minded or antiquated. And so because they're more progressive in general, they're also going to have what I consider to be more up-to-date attitudes towards things like gender equality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, gender, race, sexuality, or all these different things. Yeah, all the gamut you could explain. And so a lot of these companies are very proud of the fact that they're very progressive in these ways. And so this is something I appreciate. And so a lot of these companies also, they promote, they would like to have more, of course, more women or other people who would identify otherwise as well. Also, they want to have more minorities, or they don't want to have just, I guess it also depends on where you live. So of any industry, I'd say this is one of the most progressive ones. And so if you are finding yourself as a minority, or if you don't find perhaps you've been treated as equal because of your gender, I would say that technology and software is a more promising direction to go, because they do have the mindset and the attitude and the mission to be more equal in all these things. And so it also could depend on your region. Maybe if you live in an area that's very remote, or maybe your country is maybe not quite, maybe it's a third world country. Maybe they may not be so progressive, but a remote job will be more progressive. So that's what I would say for that.
Oh, and there's an we are outside the time, but there's an interesting one I think you need to. He says I'm an SQL developer, full-time jobs, also some freelancing, but always with signed NDA. I'm not sure what it means by that. But also yes, I don't know how to present a portfolio.
You don't know how to present a portfolio?
Yeah, I think he wants you to talk about how you can.
Oh, okay. Well, I think the program gives you many examples. I think to start, the first one you could probably do for a portfolio page is find an existing example and just replicate that, to be honest. You'll want to put your own spin on it later, certainly, and as you add your own projects, for sure. But to get like a framework up, just to put it up to get you started, is good to just honestly replicate something that's out there that looks good. And also, while you're replicating it, you're going to learn how to replicate it, and so that's helpful. So to get it up, just find one that exists and replicate it, and then later on you can improve it and customize it and make it your own and put your own spin on it, or make something completely custom if you like. But just to get it up, start from there. It's a good place to get the ball rolling.
Okay, and I think a person just dropped, says NDA means non-disclosure agreement. And but I'm going to ask, do you think for his freelancing work, I think he always has to sign this non-disclosure agreement? So now I think this is my question. Do you think it's ideal to sign that a non-disclosure agreement before you get a job?
I would say, I think I haven't had to, that's not true. I did this, I had to sign one as well for my current job. Now that I think back, yes. Basically, the code doesn't belong to me, which I'm totally fine with. I'm not going to use this code. So I don't have a problem with that. I think at some point you want to get your foot in the door. If you're talking about freelance, I'd say, okay, sure, especially for your first gigs, you just want to get the opportunity, maybe not even being super concerned about the pay. They've shown that not offering your services for free is better. You don't want to offer it for free, but you're also not going to be concerned about the money, because you just want to get your resume to start being populated with actual real world experience. So an NDA for a small short-term contract, I wouldn't be concerned about that. Also for your job, I think it's going to be pretty standard to have to say that, okay, the code that you write doesn't belong to you. I mean, I don't ever envision that being a problem for anything, so I don't have any concerns with that.
Okay, so that's that then. I think I stole a lot of your time. But anyway, thank you, Porel, for joining us today and for the insightful information. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Raphael and Adrian, for all this. And I apologize if I went long on there, but I hope I got to answer your questions. Take care, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope it was informative.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah, it was. Bye.